Welcome back to Not Enough Projects. Today we are starting a new series on this bone stock base model as they come 91 Miata. This is a 5-speed manual. It's got the open rear end. It's got a crappy top. The 1.6 is pretty tired, so we're going to be going through and refreshing it and kind of just making it the best of what the 1.8 Miatas were. So we're going to be putting in a Torsen rear end. We're going to swap the 1.8 in, put a new top on, and hopefully give this thing a little bit of a breath of life. So to start off, we're going to be replacing the open diff with a Torsen limited slip diff, which should make it a little bit more fun around the corners. So let's start tearing into it. All right, so we're going to want to start by jacking the rear up. We're going to want to get it pretty high so that we can have easy access to get to the diff and also drop it down without having to throw it on the ground and roll out. So we can just jack up from the center section of the differential. Okay, so here's what we're taking out. We've got an early NA. This is a 91. I don't think they even offered the Torsen for this year. It's kind of hard to identify the Torsen just visually. One telltale is if you don't have a rubber damper here between the drive shaft and the yoke of the transmission, then it's not a Torsen for sure. Another difference between the Torsen we're swapping in and this current one is how these shafts go in. You can see these are retained by some bolts. The shafts of the Torsen just are held in with C-clips. You'll see when we go to install them. So we're actually going to need the axle shafts from our donor car. So let's go ahead and start off by popping the exhaust out so it's out of our way. Okay, so we just got these two 14mm nuts holding the last part of the exhaust to the catalytic converter. Okay, now we just have 4 of these rubber hangers we're going to have to take out. I like to get a screwdriver in them. And then spray some kind of oil, like WD is what I use. Spread it around. And then if you get the screwdriver back out, you can pry against the back side of the hanger, just like that. Now, if you're doing the swap on a later NA, there is a brace that goes across from these two lower control arms to here and here, and then also to here and here. You have to take that off to get the exhaust out, or else it won't clear. It's actually 5. There's one back here that I forgot. Also, the later NAs have an NO2 sensor right after the catalytic converter. This one's a 91, so I guess the emissions didn't require it. It's also OBD1, obviously, so that's probably why. Now we'll go ahead and pop our axles out of the hubs. And take our wheels off for that, obviously. Okay, so we'll start off by popping our axle nut off. You see there's a tab bent in, so we're going to want to bend that out to make it easy on ourselves. And these are 29mm. It's tight. Good luck if you don't have an impact. Now we'll see if we can get it loose. We need a bigger hammer. Now we need to pop this top control arm off so we can have this swing forward and be able to get the axle out. It's just a 14mm bolt and nut. Now if we're lucky, we can just kind of pull this forward and get it out. There we go. Now we want to get it on this side so it has more room to go this way. There we go. Now we're just going to do the same thing on the other side. Alright, so this side's giving us a lot of trouble on the axle nut. The impact's not even touching it, which this is honestly maybe the first bolt that impact hasn't been able to move at all. So what we're going to do is I've got the jack stand out on this side, got all the weight on this tire, We're gonna use the jack to apply a ton of leverage to this nut, and something's gonna give, so we'll see. Alright, we're gonna go ahead and drain our differential oil now that we've got the axles out of the hubs. It's a 27. Alright, we can also go ahead and start taking off all the bolts that hold the axle shafts to the output flange on the differential. Yeah, the earlier styles like this where they just bolt on, the older style the newer style, they slide in and you gotta pry them out with the pry bar because there's a C-clip. These are actually studs, so you don't need a wrench to hold it. 14 millimeter. Alright, next we'll go ahead and get our drive shaft bolts. There's a bolt and a nut, so you gotta hold it with a wrench. Looks like one side's a 14 millimeter, the other side's a 12. Looks like they may actually just stay, you may not need a wrench. Alright, now it should come apart. Maybe. No, now we are ready to drop the back end of the PPF and then remove the differential. So we need to remove these rubber isolators up here. They've got this 14 millimeter nut in the middle and then these two 10 millimeter nuts, I believe. And then when those are out, the PPF's gonna drop. So we're gonna wanna put a jack under it right here. And then we'll drop it down and then we're gonna have to undo these bolts holding the differential to the PPF. All right, so these are actually 17 millimeters, I believe. All right, now we've got these 12 millimeter nuts. So you see these rubber isolators actually come out. Okay, now we've got these two 17 millimeter bolts holding the differential onto the PPF. Okay, so then we have another 14 millimeter bolt right here. I don't know if I actually need to take it off, but I'm going to. Alright, so now we gotta take a couple sleeves out. They slide basically from here and into there, into the differential, and they are keeping us from pulling it out. So you can see there's actually a step here where I'm putting the pry bar. So we actually need to pry this washer kind of thing out. Alright, you can see this one's pretty dang stuck, but some vice grips and persistence, it's coming. There we go. So that's what that looks like. And don't worry, we have one more. So, this one's even more fun. Way up inside. One more 14 over here that will pop out. I think this earlier design may be a little bit different where you don't have to pop that sleeve down. I could be wrong, but the later rear end that we're swapping in, it doesn't have those two 14 millimeter bolts. So we're gonna drop the PPF down and see if we can wrestle this out. All right, so you see The mounts for the differential are clear now. So let's see if we can wrestle it out. Kind of looking like the answer's no on that. Can you drop it down to here?
Whoa, are you okay?
Yeah. Alright. There we go. So what you can do, there's a sleeve here. It's a pain in the butt to get to, so what I just did is I stuck a pry bar between this and the PPF, and if you pry, it'll shift over enough that it'll pop out. Alright, so here's our old rear end. You can see how it's got axle flanges. Our new one's just got holes there. And the axles just shove in there. To pry them out, you can see actually the witness marks. You put the pry bar back end on that, slide it up into the axle, and you just pop out. Sometimes they can be a little stubborn. But this is the top little bushing collar that I was talking about. You gotta actually drop it down like that, and then it'll slide out really easy. You can see here, the earlier models have some kind of covering there. The later model, it's open, so it's a lot easier to get to. Anyways, there's the differences. So now we just gotta go ahead and heft the new one back up and in there and do the reverse of what we just did. So all Torsens have to have this rubber damper here, but not all rears that have the rubber damper are necessarily the Torsen. So you can see this one does not, so we know that it's an open diff. Another telltale is if you look through the axle hole on these later model types. So you can see we have a barrier with a small hole in it. If this were an open diff, you would just see a bar straight across. And there's two different types of Torsens. There's a Torsen type 1, and it just has, it's wide open through there. This is a type 2 because you can see there's just a small circular opening. Again, if there's a bar through there, then you know it's an open diff. If it's got this small hole through the center, it's a Torsen type 2. And if it's just wide open all the way through, then it's a Torsen type 1. Alright, so before we can get it up and in, we gotta get this little spacer back on. It only goes on one way. And like I was saying, this Torsen only has one of those 14mm bolts towards the flange that goes to the drive shaft. This bolt, which is the rear bolt because I don't have the big shoulder, back in to keep it from falling on us. So this bolt has the shoulder, and it's thicker up here so that it can't pass through that bushing. So we're going to use this bolt to push it back up into the hole in the PPF. Tricky part just getting it all aligned. Alright, now we can run them back down. Maybe. Now that those are in, we can go ahead and raise the differential and the PPF back up and get our mounts back in. Okay, now we can get the jack out of our way. get the drive shaft back in, which it looks like we're gonna have to swap drive shafts. All right, now that we've got all of the differential bolts torqued down, we just need to go ahead and get our axles back in. So here's the later style that I was talking about. It's just got this C-clip. Yeah. So to get it back in there, we just shove it in basically and make sure it's fully seated. You want to be careful of our seal. So yeah, I just need a little bit of love with the rubber mallet and she'll go in. Now we just gotta wrestle it back into the spindle. Make sure splines are in there. And this nut gets torqued to 40 foot-pounds. Now we just repeat the same thing on the other side. All right, now that we have all of our axles back up and in and the exhaust back up and in, we need to go ahead and get our axle nuts ready to get torqued. So I just ran them down with the impact. You want to get them pretty tight. We'll do the final torque on the ground. So let's drop it down, we can do that. All right, and obviously fill up the differential. I forgot to mention that. We're gonna torque these to 200 foot-pounds. So it's gonna be pretty significant. Probably just gonna roll the car. All right, and then you wanna hammer that tab in on the axle nut just to keep it from backing out. Not that it's gonna back out at 200 foot-pounds, but better safe than sorry. Also, you'll wanna torque your lug nuts. But other than that, I think we're ready to go take her out and make sure everything's working right.